This video is brought to you by Squarespace. My constantly growing Ork Speed Freak army has been participating in a crusade campaign for about a year now. And while it has been a ton of fun to play with them, they unfortunately don't win very often. A big part of this, I think, is that my war boss on Defkilla Wartrike rarely makes it past the first turn. So this week, I thought I would kitbash him up a major upgrade in the form of 6 Ork Warbikers to be his bodyguard. Part 1. Kitbashing. To begin, I busted out my copy of the current Games Workshop Warbiker kit that I've been meaning to build for several months now, as well as a set of Ork Bikers that Cromlech sent me for review last October that I also have been meaning to build for several months now. Taking a look at the Games Workshop plastic kit, you can see here it's made up of 3 different sprues, which, while they are a little bit old, all still look quite good, I think. And I just love that the Ork bodies on these are all cross-compatible with that old Ork boy kit and its associated modular system. The Cromlech kit, on the other hand, is hand-cast out of resin and looks to be a little bit more modern, coming with a variety of extra bits and accessories that I'm excited to make use of. For the bases, you can see here I've already made some in my usual Ork basing style. Check out my basing secrets video from a few months ago, linked down in the description if you want to see how I make my Ork bases. And finally, with all of our parts inventoried and a quick glance at the instructions for each one, I built up the basic bike bodies as per the instructions. And while they do look cool on their own, I wanted these to all look cohesive as part of a single unit. So I pulled the same trick here that I pulled with our Ork trucks, carefully clipping the fronts off of the official GW bikes and attaching them to the back halves of the Cromlech ones, and vice versa, attaching the Cromlech fronts to the GW backs. This took quite a bit of fussing around to get it to work correctly, and in some places I even needed to use my pin vise to join the parts together with a piece of hobby wire. But overall, I felt this was totally worth it to get some truly unique looking bikes for our already kitbash heavy Ork army. The Cromlech kit also comes with this absolutely adorable little sidecar for one of the bikes and a goblin gunner that you can sit inside of it, so this was an absolute no-brainer to attach to the boss's bike to help him stand out from the others. For the orcs riding on the bikes, I kitbashed them using a variety of parts from both the sprues that came with the 2 kits, as well as some other parts from my own collection of Ork parts, many of which were sent to me by Cromlech last October. Thanks again, Cromlech, you're the best. And to keep things relatively WYSIWYG, I made sure to give the boss biker a power claw, and the majority of the boys what I would call big choppas, with the exception of this one party animal who is dual-wielding a chain and a bottle, and is, let's face it, probably the model who's going to get removed from play first when the unit gets wounded, as he's definitely not concerned with things like steering or brakes. I also kitbashed a musician / banner bearer who I thought would look cool riding on the back of the boss's bike. And speaking of attaching all of the riders to the bikes, I'm just attaching them here with poster putty for now, because we are going to detach these in 1.5 minutes after this ad read when we're actually going to paint the bikes. But speaking of this ad read, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform for all of your Orky website needs, and it's super easy to use. Just pick from one of their fabulously designed pre-made templates, or build your own template from scratch, and then customize things to your heart's content using their extremely intuitive drag and drop fluid engine. I've been using my current website to host a gallery of my painted miniatures, all of my painting reference documents, as well as an online store which has been super easy to set up, keep updated, and accepts a variety of payment options all built in for you to use. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial? And then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/DanaHowl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to our video. To get our Orky bikers painted up, I used a variety of techniques from both previous Ork videos, as well as new techniques that I've learned since then. And to begin, I separated the bikers from the riders, sprayed both with our classic Ork starting point of black primer and then an overspray of Pro-Acryl Mahogany to get things looking nice and rusty. And then beyond this, the two paint methods diverged a bit, with the bike riders getting a simple spray of titanium white on all of their areas of skin, as well as any areas where I know I'm going to put a bright color later on. And instead of titanium white on the bikes themselves, we're going to give them a slightly more fleshed out undertone to match the bases of all the other models in the army. Starting out with a spray of Pro-Acryl Jade from the sides of the model's bases, as well as slightly upwards onto the undersides of the bikes. And then I followed this up with a lighter, more subtle spray of Pro-Acryl Yellow Green in just a few little areas on the bases to add some variety. Personally, I think of these as little bioluminescent fungal growths or patterns that are all around the Ork settlement. And you can see here I'm also adding some additional sprays to the original Def Killa Wartrike's base in places that I just wanted to punch it up a little bit to match all of our new bikers. You can also see I'm adding in a few OSL elements to the Def Killa Wartrike to represent the Wazblasta enhancement, as well as the two Killajets, now that I know what these are supposed to represent. And with our base tones complete, it's time to return to our painting desk to do the rest of the painting. For the Orks and Goblins, I started out by fleshing out their skin tones in my usual way, using a dark red speed paint to coat all of the crevices in and around the skin, and then using titanium white to do a little bit of cleanup and to add some highlights to the skin. Once our skin has been underpainted, I then used a different green speed paint or contrast paint from my collection on each Ork or Goblin's skin to achieve the base skin look. And from here, I fleshed things out a little bit more, adding a few highlights wherever I thought it was necessary, using a slightly lighter acrylic tone. Once this was done, I cleaned up any areas around the skin by using a dark brown speed paint, as well as using this color to base coat any eyes or other little details on the orcs that needed a dark brown color. And from here, I started working up the metallics both on the bikes as well as the riders, dry brushing copper or dull silver on top of any areas that I wanted to be metal. Beyond this, I used a thinned down orange color to add a little bit of orange rust into the crevices of the metals. And then we get to one of the most fun parts, painting everything red to make them go faster. I started this out by painting on some Pro-Acryl Burnt Red, which is a slightly darker red color. As I'm doing this, I'm making sure to just dab things on, leaving lots of areas where the paint would have chipped off. And then after this, I added on highlights using a slightly brighter red color, bold Pyrrole Red. And then in some areas where I wanted a really bright highlight, I went so far as to add a highlight of Pro-Acryl Golden Brown before glazing some bold Pyrrole Red back on top of that. Speaking of golden brown, I used golden brown as probably the second most common accent color on the bikes and clothing, using it for all the various stitching on the clothing as well as various cloth wrappings, ropes, or bones attached to the bikes themselves. In some areas, I also added a thin coat of mahogany on top of these areas to add some shading, dirt, and grime, or depth. For a few areas where I wanted a brighter yellow accent color, I once again used golden brown as the base coat, but then I added a single thin coat of Pro-Acryl Warm Yellow on top of that to increase the saturation. I do this because Warm Yellow doesn't have a very good opacity on its own, so if you want a really bright yellow, you can use golden brown underneath it, or even an ivory like I did in some cases. A few of the orcs in this set also had larger areas of dark brown leather clothing that I thought could use some more shading or texture while still remaining that dark leather color. So for these, I used golden brown to add some rough, sketchy highlights to these pieces of clothing to add that leather texture, before then glazing on a thin coat of mahogany to tone things back down into a more realistic leather look. To finish up, I added a few orky decals or hand-painted details to each model, cleaned up any final areas that needed finishing, glued the riders down to their bikes, and then gave all of the models a spray from above using a thinned down mix of speed paint maize yellow. I do this to sort of color grade everything to make it look like it belongs on a hazy afternoon on the planet of Morian, where the rest of my orc army resides. And that's about it. Combined with my warlord, this now represents an intimidating 210-point block of fast-moving, hard-chopping orcs on wheels that I am confident will at least intimidate my opponents on the battlefield, if not potentially defeat them. And combined with the rest of my orc units, we are now up to about 1,500 points of painted models in our speed wall. Of course, all of this might change in a few months once the 11th edition comes out, and presumably our orcs are going to get all new rules and units when that happens. But I'm trying not to think too hard about that for now and live more in the present, as we've still got at least 3 months of playing matches with our current orc army before those new rules come out. Once that happens, I am hoping to get the new Armageddon box on my hobby desk and get totally immersed into the new rule set and new models. If you want to follow along with that, you can always subscribe to the channel. Or if you want to help out the channel even more, you can check out my Patreon link down in the description if you want to gain access to our painting Discord server or get your name up in the credits going by right now. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.